All right, welcome everybody. This is a What's Up For You call, and it is January 10th, 2023. So let me check in real quick just before we get started and see if there's anything I want to share with you before we kind of go right into the questions, and we'll kind of go from there, okay? So, yeah, so let's, it's the start of a new year, and there's all kinds of knowns and unknowns as we step into a new year, right? And so just giving yourself permission to breathe and relax and allow yourself to just feel for a moment what you want to feel in this moment versus what your body might be habitually feeling in this moment. So if you habitually get to the beginning of a new year and think, oh my gosh, there's all these amazing possibilities and also all of these, potential challenges, depending on how your body is wired, you might go right into some degree of stress or anxiety, or you might go into some degree of, excitement and anticipation, right? So, but what is it that you want to feel in this moment? And for no other reason other than you want to feel it, let's just give ourselves a little dose of that energy. Just kind of imagine it into being, if you will. Right there. Yeah, just relax. Use words like ease and grace and relaxation and maybe even relief. And you can notice that even when you just say those words, something changes in the energy field, maybe just for a second. But practicing this as you move into 2023 is going to be really helpful. Yep, it's going to be really helpful for everybody involved. Here we go. All right. So Sharon, what questions do you have for me today?
Okay, very first question is, I have been working on a project to open a new preschool in the fall. Although I have not found the building to buy or rent, secured a business loan, or found people to support the co-creation, I continue to grow this idea. In the process, at times it feels overwhelming. Is there a process or information you might offer that could help me better ground this project? And do I have the physical strength to do and actually birth this new school? Thank you.
Well, first, let me just say that, a lot of that is really up to you. I mean, a lot of that is, as far as the physical strength and all of these things, I know that those have been concerns in the past. And at the same time, and rightly so, if you've had that kind of physical stress that has made it so that, those kinds of things are a consideration, that the strength of the body, the strength of the will, the strength of the creative capacity, all of those things are really what's coming up as a conversation for you right now. So, and it may be the reason why we started this session the way we started it, which is, can we give ourselves these little microdoses of what we want to feel in any given moment? Can we actually just say, okay, these are the things that I'm intending to do. I'm intending to create this preschool. I'm intending to do these things. That's what your focus is. And now from that place, go right into giving yourself a little microdose of what it would feel like to have that be complete. And something might come up like, oh, well, what about my health and well-being? What about my will? What about, and thank that. Thank you very much for that information coming up. And let's go back to microdosing ourselves and giving ourselves the energy that we want to feel in that moment. Because it's more likely that if you build that energy in the moment by moment, what you're going to notice is that that trajectory that you're intending is a much easier flow all the way around. And you want to create from flow, right? Instead of problem solving. So I hope that's helpful.
All right, this question is, my son denies himself food when he doesn't feel that he deserves it. He sees it as deliberately self-harming. Can you offer any advice?
I want a little bit more information about this before I answer this question. Is that something that your child actually says or communicates to you, or is that an assumption that you're making? Can you let me know that? Does he actually say, I don't want food because it's harming me, or is that what you're assuming is happening? Yeah.
He tells me that he can't eat.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. So again, saying I can't eat and saying I can't eat because it's harming my body, because it's let me just tell you what I'm feeling in this one. I feel like there is a combination of energy going on, whereas your son may be saying, I can't eat, and then there's other energy that's being added to it as to the why of the can't eat. So let's look a little bit deeper here, and because it feels like there's two energy fields that are coming to this conclusion, you might say. And so we want it to be as easy and as effortless for him to, and as joyful for him to consume food, have whatever he needs for his health and vitality, for the wellness of his body. So we want to just make sure that we're not adding anything to that mix that might be making it more difficult instead of less, for him to do that. So give me just 1 second here. This is what I'm hearing, and take it for what it's worth. What I'm hearing is when he says, I can't eat, there's an energy around not knowing what is good for him and what's not good for him, what is perceived in that energetic field as what's good and what's not good for him. I think we can all relate to this in some ways. I mean, if you are somebody who looks into diets or just what's good for us and what's not good for us, it can make you crazy. It can really just drive you crazy as to what's all the things that are available out there and all the points of view that are available out there. And so one of the things that I would say to him, or start really reinforcing for him, is that we each know what our bodies need. We each intuitively know what is good for us. And that's kind of the direction that we want to point him back in. And it may also be that, it's something that you want to say for yourself too. Sometimes we have to close down all the outside noise so that we can hear that inner wisdom, that inner voice again, so that we can give ourselves permission to know, this is good for me, this isn't good for me. And sometimes we need to close off that outside noise for quite a period of time before we really start to hear that voice again. I would also, that piece about it being because it's that added energy of it being anything else other than I'm not exactly sure what I should be eating for me, what's good for him. Anything that comes after that feels like it's additional story that might be making it a little bit more challenging for him to find the right things that for him. So yeah, so let's put that energy in the mix first. Let's assume that he knows, just like any human being knows, what is actually good for them and what isn't good for them. And then let's notice what he gravitates toward. And let's encourage him and maybe even praise him, congratulate him for moving towards the things that are good for him. We're just kind of trying to turn a ship around is what it feels like. You know, we're, so that's where I would start. Yeah.
She also added, he says he's punishing himself as well. So.
Okay. Okay. Again, that's a different, I still feel that as a different energy. I don't feel that as, he's either picked that up somewhere. It's either coming down through the lineage. It's a belief system that might be an unconscious pattern for those around him or somebody within the lineage, or even what he's picking up from collective human consciousness. And I just want to keep it as simple as possible for him, because the more we feed into that I'm punishing myself, the more that energy is solidified and grows. So again, gently steering his focus in a different direction. I would say things to him like, I understand that you might have picked up the energy of self-punishment somewhere. I understand that that might have been picked up somewhere. And I know that you can choose what is best and right for you. There we go, right there. So, and the reason that saying these things works in this way is because you're speaking to his totality. You're speaking to the greater capacity of him. You're not just speaking to the human part of him that seems to be challenged or self-punishing or those kinds of things. And we really, 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 as we move into 2023 and beyond, we need to be speaking to the totality of ourselves and to the kids. If we're only speaking to the human part that is perceived as challenged, we will get that back over and over again. Okay, so everybody take a nice inhale and exhale, and that's how I would redirect. Yeah, I want to give you just an example before I take the next question. I was working with a client the other day, and they have a young son who is not sleeping through the night and wakes up in the middle of the night. Sometimes he's laughing hysterically. Sometimes he's crying hysterically. But no matter how you cut it, mom and dad aren't sleeping through the night, you know, which of course makes it that much more challenging to, you know, be present for him and kind and, you know, loving and supportive and not exhausted, you know. So their son said, you know, he's quite capable of traveling in all kinds of worlds and all kinds of realities. And he does so at night effortlessly. And some of those doors that he opens as he travels at night are scary to him. And some of those doors are, you know, fun and exciting and interesting. And so all we did, we just said to him, just had mom say to him, you know, it's like, wow, I'm really amazed that you can travel in all these different places at night. And some of those doors that you go in that are scary, maybe you want to just pull that door shut and not go in there. Other doors that are really fun loving and you're enjoying, go in, have a great time. You know, it's like just speaking directly to the fact that this little boy, although he's, you know, a little one, is not just a little one. He is a big being traveling all over the place, doing all kinds of amazing things. And so she just said that to him. And literally that night, she slept 100% through the night in her own bed, right? He slept through the night in his own bed. This is what I mean. We're speaking to the totality of someone instead of speaking to the limitations of them. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Sharon, how about you?
All right, this question is, the earlier labels of indigos, crystals, and etc., are they on the spectrum, and what contributions do they play as they are now older?
Yeah, so I see everything as vibrational information. And so, to be honest, back when I started talking about all this in 99, you know, indigos, crystal children, all of that kind of information was much more predominant, you might say, much more in the, yeah, it's just much more was being talked about than I feel like it is now. It might be that it's still being talked about and I'm just not hearing it myself as much. But what I will say is that if I looked energetically, vibrationally at a, you know, crystal child, an indigo, rainbow child, all these different vibrations, you might say, or information fields that made up these different kinds of children. And if I also looked at an autistic child at that same kind of time period, I'll tell you what the difference was for me. The difference was very often the kids would have a very similar, now this is back then, a very similar vibrational frequency or information field. But the difference was one parent perceived it through the lens of giftedness, right? And the other perceived it through the lens of challenge. And so therefore the children would show up differently. So that's not as much the case now as it is then, but I want to answer the other part of your question, which is, how does this all play in together? So from my vantage point, we have all of these different fields of information that are accessible to not only us as human beings having an experience, a lot of, you know, not just us having access to different levels of experience, right? But also there is, what does the collective human experience require as well? So let's say we have a bunch of kids that come in and they're crystal and rainbow and indigo and all of this, all of these other, what I'm going to say is labels, that that's just fields of information that get labeled in a particular way. And therefore, because they get labeled in a particular way, they get treated in a particular way. They are seen in a particular light. And that information and all of that combined together goes together to create a support system for helping humanity evolve. That's also the case with children diagnosed who ultimately get diagnosed on the spectrum. The difference in my world anyway is a lot of those that are diagnosed on the spectrum are actually clearing, I'll say, collective trauma. Yep. So a lot of kids that have that diagnosis come in because they, not because they, let me, hold on a second, it's just, there's so many layers to this. I'm just trying to find the best one. Tari quiero que me I see. Ya to kori kara matari ya si to kori me tari ya kai tari ya ta e quiero que me. Okay, so let's say all the indigo type labels came in to set a vibrational field, and a lot of that information was coming in on rays of information that were moving into the human condition, right? And are still to one degree or another moving into the human condition. And as those rays set the template, you might say, or created a foundation for new types of children, other new types of children to be born, then we started getting children who were diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. To me, ADD, ADHD is attention in different dimensions, attention in different dimensions at a hyper speed or at a, beyond time and space. To me, that's the vibrational signature of ADD and ADHD. Those two populations were the diagnosis of the decades, you might say, before autism came in. And they had to come in before autism came in because they were also setting a vibrational stage, if you will, for the next iteration of souls to be born on the planet. And when I look at those that are diagnosed on the spectrum, a lot of those children are, on the one hand, clearing collective human trauma. So we get the other kids come in, they set the stage, they make the ground ready, you might say. We have kids come in that are seeing in different dimensions and different realms, beyond time and space, you might say. Then we have a population that comes in and says, okay, now that all the groundwork has been laid, we can now come in and clean up some of this long-term trauma that has been going on forever. And a lot of these kids in this population had not been around since the time of Lemuria. And because of that, they had not necessarily, the time of Lemuria, we were in light bodies, and there was not anywhere near the degree of trauma that has been experienced since then, right? Atlantis was, you might say, parallel and post Lemuria. So when you're talking about Atlantis on, that's trauma, right? So these kids come back and go, okay, guess what? We can help clear up that trauma. And so they're doing it for family units. They're doing it for their lineages. They're doing it within the collective. They're doing it every way, shape, and form they possibly can. And it's also partially the reason why these kids have access to so many worlds, realms, and dimensions, because why not go to the world, realm, and dimension where it's easiest to clear that trauma? Doesn't make it easy for them. These are big souls. These are enormous souls. But it is part of their capacity. I hope that says what it needed to say. Yeah.
All right, this question is, I feel that it is time to leave my marriage and have been actively asking for a deeper relationship. But now I am resisting this change because of the massive magnitude and the change I am so afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, those big transitions in life, it's like, oh my gosh, I can so empathize with that movement, that change, that shift, and that request that you're making, that request of wanting something deeper, wanting to be able to maybe exchange at a deeper level. And so again, before anything happens, before anything changes in the outer world, can you give yourself that feeling right here, right now? Can you move right into that space of what it would feel like, what it would be like to actually be in a dynamic or in a relationship that is supporting and loving and kind and deep in connection and communication and conversation and awareness. Can we feel that in the moment, right? And as we give ourselves in that moment, that feeling, that experience, it naturally and organically makes it easier, again, to receive the information about next steps. It's actually, we're creating that field for ourselves, which also makes it much more likely that if we step out of one situation, we don't step into the exact same situation. So we're wanting to really give ourselves, whether it's a new relationship or whether it's, no matter what it is, can we offer that feeling to ourselves in the now moment? And again, it might be for a nanosecond. We might be able to hold it for a moment, and then the mind might come back in and say, you know, yeah, but, okay. The fact is that we want to step out of one situation and into the next situation that wants to be created. And so we want to create that right here, right now, even while we're in the old situation. And then the guidance will flow, the direction will be made obvious. And sometimes things change and shift in interesting and miraculous ways. So you just never know what the outcome is, but give it to yourself now. Yeah.
All right, this question is, there are common themes around setting boundaries, which in many instances I am able to set. In other circumstances, I have difficulties. If you could please share thoughts around the importance of setting boundaries and what is driving the difficulties in doing so. And by the way, I'm a fairly strong-minded individual, so it surprised myself to observe these difficulties.
You know, I really feel like if we start with the conversation of boundaries around and pair that with the topic of being kind to ourselves. Yeah, of really being kind to ourselves, because so often we have been conditioned to set a boundary either because we believe something else or someone else is bigger than we are, and therefore we have to set a boundary as some form of protective mechanism, or we have been conditioned, and most human beings on this planet, regardless of who we are or you know, yeah, how strong-willed or strong-minded we are, we've all been deeply conditioned to solve problems, and therefore we perceive when we go to set a boundary, it's we're trying to solve a problem. Yep. And so all well and good, there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we've all been kind of programmed and conditioned. But if we start from a place of love and compassion for ourselves, that even the idea of setting a boundary is so that we feel our own power, so that we feel our own strength, so that we know ourselves as big as capable as any other energy that might be presenting on the planet. the moment that we go to that place of supporting ourselves and having compassion for ourselves, loving ourselves, that this boundary is being created because we love ourselves. Yeah. That love of self has a tendency to naturally and organically create the boundary. Yeah. It's we've just been conditioned, and I'm watching this more and more. I think over the last year, and definitely as we stepped into this year, I'm just seeing more and more clearly how we have all been conditioned. I watch it in myself, and I'm noticing that stepping right into problem solving all the time has really been considered a strength for so many of us. And especially if we're really strong-willed or strong-minded, we can find our way around just about anything. But I'm beginning to wonder if that isn't kind of a bit of a co-op, because the bottom line is we are all amazingly beautiful, powerful beings, beings of light. And maybe we want to acknowledge that first and foremost. Maybe we want to reorient our perception of who we are to that first. And then we naturally have a really strong yes to what we will do and a strong no to what we won't do. And again, a lot of times we can have those strong boundaries when it comes to other people, other realities, other experiences. Sometimes when it comes to our own family or our own children, not so easy. And there's a reason for that. That's where the deepest conditioning actually is. So just right there, acknowledging that boundary wants to be set from a place of love of self, not from a story about what's being done to us or through us. Yeah, right there. Yeah, that locked into place. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I have a child in my life diagnosed medically with fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. His energy can be very chaotic and sometimes quite startling to me. How can I be with his energy in a way that does not scare me so much? Maybe scared is the wrong word, but his energy sometimes makes me feel anxious.
Of course, yeah. And think about an adult who is addicted to alcohol. Yeah. And that adult that's addicted to alcohol, we know this many times, that addiction is a cover-up for trauma. It's a cover-up. It's either a way to feel or it's a way not to feel. And so a lot of the energy of what might be playing out is exactly that. It's the energy of fear, of being startled, of being overwhelmed, of being, attempting to neutralize some feelings that are just too challenging to be felt. And so this child that is born or is developing in that particular womb is not only picking up the propensity to use alcohol in that way, but they're also picking up the propensity of why to use alcohol in that way. All of those, all of that is what the soup is that this little one was grown in, And so some of the things that we might be able to say to this little one, whether you believe they're fully understanding or not, is Oh my gosh, honey, you picked up so much information. You picked up so much fear and anxiety and stress. And, and I would say it almost like I've just said it. You literally were growing up in the soup of that kind of energy. And I know you're doing the best job you possibly can. Right here, right now, I know that you're not meaning to startle me. I know that you're really trying to regulate your body as powerfully as you possibly can. And I acknowledge that in you. I see that in you. I appreciate that effort. Yeah. Just say to this kid what actually is. Say to this little one what actually is, and see if it doesn't become much easier for both your inner children. Yeah, because what's being triggered in you is your own inner child. And so as you say to this child what the bigger part of this child needs to hear, you're also saying to your own inner child things that will comfort it. And that energy can shift pretty quickly. Yeah. Yeah. Trying, this one's trying, it's, this child didn't choose to swim in that soup. None of us choose to swim in the soup that we swim in as we are developing in our parents' wombs. Our children didn't, choose to swim in that kind of soup, not from a conscious level anyway. And so we're really bridging the conscious experience, which is trauma response, and the soul experience or the source experience, which understands exactly what they chose. So we don't understand what we chose from that human cognitive conscious perspective. We only understand that from the much bigger view. Here we go. So we're just acknowledging what what any of the kids, what any of us might be experiencing in any given moment. Speak it as the truth that it is, so that the source self, the soul self, can come in and be some support, help to reorganize that. All right. That it's, I can feel this one because it's, just like alcohol gets kind of in the blood, literally. I could really feel this kid just trying to dump as much from his circulatory system, from the blood, from the cells, from the memory as he possibly could, just as we're having that conversation. So yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
All right, this question is, I and my children are gaining a lot of weight. We are all aware of the emotional eating in which we all participate, and where we eat sugary carb-filled foods. We are all uncomfortable with our bodies, and they are literally weighing us down. As each of us have separately articulated this, we intellectually know we would benefit to moving our bodies more into consuming more clean foods. Is there any input you may provide to shift the emotional basis that seems to be intertwined with our emotional eating habits?
Let's see. This question has been asked before, and there's layers of this. So we've kind of addressed it from different places and spaces in the past, is what it feels like. And so what I'm speaking to here is what's coming in this moment, in this layer, you might say. So again, you're asking about, emotional patterning and those. So you can say, we can call that trauma too. So some degree of emotional trauma that turns into a need to buffer the system. Yeah, to buffer the system. And for whatever reason, what I'm really hearing right now is putting your attention point, regardless of what the emotional information is, regardless of any of that, place your attention point right back into your power center. Put it right back into your solar plexus. Feed. Let's for just a little while anyway, for just a period of time, let's put food and weight and all of that kind of information, the more kind of mainstream information about that, let's put that on the back burner just for a second. And let's go into starting to feed your power center. Feed who you are in truth. And by feed it, I mean literally go into the solar plexus. And at first it's going to feel like it doesn't feel like it has much power. Or maybe it has power in certain areas of your life experience, but it doesn't feel like it has power in other areas. And all of the areas where it doesn't feel like it has power, we're going to start feeding it that power. And sometimes we feed it just by reminding it that there is power there. There is power. There is, and that power matches to will. The power and the will to move beyond is the way I'm hearing it. The power and the will to let go of what was and move into what is possible is the way I'm hearing this. So as you go right into and start feeding the power center, and you can't feed that for your children, you can feed it for yourself first. And as things start shifting for you, it may even feel like the places where you have not felt like you were in power are in relationship to the kids. And if that is the case, then sometimes, okay, for right now, the kids may be uncomfortable in their own skin, in their own weight, in their own, and that's okay, because every individual kind of needs to get to the place in their own experience where they want to make that shift, right? They want to make that change, but much more likely that they will want to make that change when that shift and change happens in, in your own pattern, in the adults in their life. When we shift that pattern, the kids who are so vibrationally connected anyway, see that shift, see that movement of energy and go, oh yeah, I can choose that too. I want to choose that too. So we're going to feed the solar plexus. Yep, we're going to feed it first in love and compassion for all the places and spaces that you might not have felt like you were powerful in your life or had the power to overcome something. And this can go back to childhood. This can usually, whatever the childhood pattern is, recycles over and over again until it shows up, in the same pattern, but in the adult version of it, right? So just feeding. I'd make it simple too. I would feed the solar plexus, maybe with color, maybe with the feeling of love and compassion. Feed it with the feeling of all of the other ways in which you are extremely powerful in your life. Yeah. So that you're just feeding that energy. And as you feed the power center, some of the other ways in which we feed ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, drop away simply because we're feeding what actually needs to be felt, which actually needs to be fed. Yeah. And you've got so many reference points. I can see all of these. You've got so many reference points for power in your life experience. Those just want to be brought into the mix when it comes to those places where you feel the most vulnerable.
Yeah. I'm having difficulty allowing creativity and living and acting from flow. It feels unsafe to do so. How do I move beyond that?
Same. We want to give ourselves the energy of flow in the moment. So what happens for many of us, and I know I've spoken to this before, but it bears repeating because we are really literally learning a new way of being. So many of us have been conditioned to have an experience. It's a trigger for us, or it unnerves us, or it brings up a feeling that we really don't want to feel, right? And so we go into, we either stop, we fight, flight, or freeze right there. Yep. And a lot of times we're just like, oh, I'm frozen. I can't do anything about it. So I'm just feeling this feeling and I don't want to be feeling it. So let's go distract ourselves. Let's go do something else. One of the things that we really first, let's just acknowledge this is what I'm feeling and it's overwhelming and it's this and it's that. Be honest with yourself. It's all of those things. There's no shame in feeling whatever is being felt because that's what's there in the moment. So first we want to feel whatever that is that it wants to be felt. And next, we want to ask ourselves, what's the signature? What's the energy that we want to feel? In your case, you want to feel flow. Yep, you just want to feel flow. And so even saying that word flow, every word has a vibration. So if you're just sitting with your eyes closed for a second and you say flow, without any preconceived idea of having to make yourself flow or having the universe or the world or reality flow, if you just say that word flow, you're already there. You already are imprinting that signature. So if every time the energy comes up that is challenging, you acknowledge it, you call it what it is, yeah, call it what it is. And then you step right into offering yourself the energy of flow. What would it feel like to just be in flow right here, right now? Not because I changed anything other than the intent to just give myself that in this moment, right? Right there. Yep. Right there. What ends up happening is the heart begins to shift a little bit. The awareness that you have that capacity to give yourself what you need in that moment is more readily available to you. And the moment the inner landscape, the moment the inner energetics of us shifts, the outer landscape has to shift. There is no out there, right? So when we shift vibrationally, energetically, even if we just give it to ourselves for a nanosecond, as we build that field, and it does take time, you are going to have to practice it. But as you build that field, you're absolutely going to notice that the outer landscape changes and you'll move into flow. Yeah. I'll give you a very funny example. And then, so I am going to be mother of the bride in February for my daughter, my third daughter. And I do my own thing. I live in my own space. I like to dress up. I don't dress up all that often. I'm in front of you guys more often than not. So this mother of the bride dress thing was really getting me. So I live in Prescott, Arizona. A couple of my kids live in Phoenix, about an hour and a half away. So Saturday of the week, on the weekend, I drove to Scottsdale. I went looking at all the places that would have dresses that I thought I would like and would have the style that I like and things like that. And I was anxious. I was overwhelmed. I was in my head about all the things that I didn't like. And I went all the way down there, drove all the way back, spent the whole day and came home with nothing, right? So really anxious still. So the next morning I woke up, I'm online. I'm still have not offered any of the techniques to myself that I'm talking to all of you about today. I just was in mode of getting this dress. Went online, found something, couldn't get it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all of a sudden I felt it, it clicked. I was like, wait a minute, Suzy, you haven't done anything that you're telling other people about. So let's reorganize here. So what is it that I want to feel? I want to feel relief. That's what I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted to feel comfortable and confident. I wanted to feel that my daughter was, pleased with what my choice was so that she would be less stressed. All these things were things I was feeling. So I got in the car and I drove back to Phoenix again. And as I was driving, and I would get anxious, and then I would feel myself just go, no, what I'm asking for, the primary feeling is relief. First I want relief. And I heard Calvin Klein. And I went, what? So on the way down to Phoenix, there's an outlet as Calvin Klein. So I stopped at Calvin Klein, walked in, walked out, zero there. And I'm thinking, that energy comes back up again. What is it that I'm looking for? I'm looking for relief. I'm looking for the energy of relief, put myself back in relief, put myself back in Maria loves this dress, put myself back in, feeling really excited about taking pictures, put myself in that space. So I get in the place, 30 dresses in the dressing room. I'm FaceTiming the girls, showing them the dresses. I FaceTime Maria. I said, Maria, what do you think about this? She said, I love it. She goes, where are you? I tell her where I am. She goes, I'm outside. I'm in that same mall area, that same area. I'm right outside. I said, come on in. She comes in, tells me what to get. I ended up with 2 dresses, but she tells me what to get. I walk outside and I look at the label of the one dress and it says Calvin Klein. So all I'm saying is it's not like, okay, I want to feel better. Make me feel better, some magic wand. We're so powerful that when we put our energy in any place, even for the most mundane of tasks, you might say, what ends up happening is we are the ones that reorganize our energy. We're the ones that do that, provided we remember to do it. And I remembered after an awful lot of discomfort, right? Just like we all do. But the moment that we kind of go, what is it that I want to feel in this moment? And we give ourselves that, the whole universe, you might say, all of reality can reform what we experience. And the better we get at this, as we move forward, the faster our realities are going to change in all kinds of ways. This is partially because collective humanity is no longer as locked up as they used to be. There is actually more potential for change now than there has ever been, because collective humanity is saying, no, we can't do it this way anymore. So as those of us start playing in this energy and start creating vibrationally, just putting ourselves in that space, you are going to notice that that change is going to happen really quick. So even if you've been somebody who's done this in the past and you go, yeah, that didn't work for me in the past. Part of the reason why it didn't work for you in the past is because collective humanity was locked down. There was no flow. And you might have been able to do it. You might have been able to put yourself in that space and really see that you were living a very different life than the collective was. And a lot of us have lived a very different life than the collective has. But when we're getting right down to physical manifestations and changing in the physical world, I'll tell you, there's never been a better time than right here, right now, to make that change, because everybody's changing. Okay, so Sharon, one more quick one, and then we're gonna call it a day. No more? Okay.
Well, I have some, but they're kind of big.
Okay.
Actually, let's do this one. It tells us a second part of that question that you just answered.
Okay.
I have done this many times, and it builds up to a certain point where I encounter one big trauma energy that has me pulled back.
Yep.
So I'm even avoiding starting to build the flow of energy.
Yeah, I totally get that. And that one big space, that trauma space that you're hitting, is the space that has never been felt. It's the very space that wants your love and attention. So anytime we say, this is where we are, this is what we want, right? We immediately build up tension. There is some form of energetic tension that starts to happen. Most human beings have been conditioned to say, ooh, that tension is there. I need to go do something else. I need to step away from that tension. And we do that in all kinds of ways. We have not been taught to move toward that tension. We have not been taught to support ourselves in each movement toward that tension. So the minute you say, I want this, but I have that, it's a good thing that that tension has been built up, because the minute we say, I want what's over here, and this is what I have, everything that is attempting to keep us safe in the known, everything that is attempting to keep us in what we have already survived comes up to the surface. So we say, well, I survived being stuck before. I survived not being in the flow before. I've survived abuse before. I've survived all this, right? Even though nobody would consciously choose that, the unconscious says, well, I survived it. That's the known. So let me keep creating that. Right? So and again, we don't keep creating this through the conscious mind. Nobody in their right mind would say, I want to recreate trauma. But the unconscious says, this is where I actually feel safe, because this is what I survived. This is the very reason why we're here. We want to get here. And all of that stress starts to come up, that tension starts to come up. And every moment that tension comes up, we go right to that tension and we feed ourselves a different feeling. We feed ourselves something new. We retrain the body to feel comfortable being in a state that is beyond what has been known. And the beautiful, beautiful thing about doing it in this way is that every single time you feed yourself a little bit of something that you want in the moment, by the time you actually have what you want, it's so easy and effortless that you don't know how you got there. You know, it's like, it's because the mind is saying, don't go there, don't go there, it's scary. You know, don't step into that trauma, or don't step into that thing that you want to move beyond. I want to move beyond the trauma. Well, the trauma comes up the minute we say we want to move beyond the trauma. But that's not a bad thing. Step right into it. Step right close to it and give yourself the feeling of safety. Give yourself the feeling of being nurtured through that trauma as it arises, because that's why it's stuck in the first place. That's what it didn't get in the first place. Yeah, right there, right there. So it comes up, the tension's there. It's a good thing. Thank you, tension, for being there. Thank you for showing me what I need to add energy to, what I need to recreate. And that energy of tension, stress, anxiety, fear, worry, concern, whatever it is. And what I would like to feel in this moment is this. And just allow yourself sometimes just to say the word. But if you are somebody who can feel and imagine and see, I would add all of that to the mix as well. And every single time that energy comes up, stop. Thank you very much for showing me that. And this is what I'm going to replace it with. And at this time in history, in the past, you might have had to do that for months or years. In this energetic climate, you might have to do it for weeks, a month, just to reorient. And then you're off on a new trajectory. All right. Hope that's helpful. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to have to let you guys go now. And I really appreciate it. And this is a pretty transformational year. This is a 7-year. It can be magical. There can be all kinds of things that can happen in a 7-year, that mystical, magical, you know, and we're just kind of feeding ourselves in the right way to the best of our ability to help that along a little bit. Yeah. And as we do, we might just become really aware of just how powerful we actually are, what the capacity actually is. So lots of love, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye.